meeting for our South County residents. Just real briefly, we're going to kind of go around and do a brief introduction of everybody that's going to be on our panel tonight. So I will defer to our District 5 Supervisor here to my left.
So hi, I'm Matt Conan. I'm District 5 Supervisor in Sutter County. I'm just finishing up my first term, and we're glad that you guys are all tuning in. You know, since we can't really meet in person anymore, this is the next best thing we can do to get out the message of what's going on in Sutter County and what we're working on. Thank you.
I'm Lieutenant Steve Grassi. I am the Detective Lieutenant in charge of investigations with the Sheriff's Office.
Hey, I'm Under Sheriff Scott Smallwood, second in command with the Sheriff's Department, and grateful to be here and looking forward to answering the questions for District 5.
I'm Deputy Andre Lacan, and I head up our community response team for community issues and neighborhood watch.
Okay, just real briefly, I kind of wanted to let everybody know we're obviously streaming this live tonight on a couple different formats. We're on Facebook as well as YouTube. We do have some of our community service officers here tonight that are monitoring those. So if there are any questions, feel free to type those in. I will tell you that we had an overwhelming response for questions that came into our department. We've got about 20 of those, and so we'll give everybody a brief update, and then we'll make every attempt we can to get through everyone's questions. We do have about an hour scheduled tonight for the facility that we're doing this from. We're allowed to go a little bit over, but again, we'll try to maximize our time and make good use of the time that we have here and answer everyone's questions. So I'll go ahead and start. I just wanted to give everybody a little bit of an update on some things that are happening within the Sheriff's Department before we get to the question. So first topic I'll touch on is homelessness. Obviously, this is a problem in a few select areas in the county. One of those specific to the South County is down in the town of Robbins or near Robbins at Second Beach. I won't go into that in great detail because Deputy Lacan's going to speak to that specifically here in a little bit. But I did want to remind everybody that Better Way did open up this past year. That program has been very successful at housing people that are homeless, getting them into programs, and then successfully getting them back out into some transitional housing. The biggest challenge that we've had from the Sheriff's Department perspective is the case law says you need to provide a space for someone to rest their head overnight. So we're actually working with our County Board of Supervisors and our CAO to designate a couple areas. One specifically for overnight camping, which will meet the requirements in the county ordinance. Currently, their property that we're looking at is down in the area of 2nd Street, and that specifically will be for overnight camping. The other thing that we need to do is we need to identify a place for camp trailers to park overnight. The reality is, you know, if you have a spot for overnight camping specific to tent camping, no one's going to leave their trailer to go sleep in a tent. And so we've got to kind of solve that problem. I will tell you that the county has got about 4 different properties that they're looking at, and they're in various kind of degrees of negotiating with property owners, and so hopefully we'll see some progress in that here in the near future. Supervisor Conant may touch on that a little bit more here as it comes to him, but once we get that place for overnight camping, overnight parking, we will absolutely be able to enforce our county ordinance. So while I realize it's frustrating, we do need to show a little bit of patience. I think if you were to look back over the last year and a half or so that I've been in office, some of the strides we've made in the area of homelessness have been pretty significant. And I realize they're not always, you know, apparent as you're driving down the street, but if you were to, you know, go behind the scenes a little bit and you look at some of the things we're doing, it's some pretty remarkable work in a year and a half. And so we're going to continue to build on that, and I'm looking forward to, you know, continued progress in that area. The next thing that I personally wanted to talk about, one of the questions that came in from a couple different residents down in the South County was as it pertains to crime statistics. And so I'll go over some of those here in just a little bit when we get to the question and answer period. But what we have up on the screen here where we're at is our Sheriff's Department homepage. And so I just wanted to let everybody know real quickly, as I face the screen on my immediate left, there's a tab on the left-hand side called Crime Search, and you can click that tab on, and I'll have someone click that on for us here. And then once you click that on, it'll go to a map of the county. So once that map comes out, there's some drop-down boxes on the very left-hand side of your screen. So that bottom one there, you can search by either beat, which is specific to how we respond to calls for service, or you can search by supervisor district. So if you were to click on and go down to District 5, it will give you everything in Supervisor Conant's district. And that'll pop up here in just a second. So now on the very top right, you'll see the number 0 up there. That means in the last 24 hours, there were no crimes reported down in that area. There's another drop-down box on the top left there, and you can go back 24 hours, you can go back a week, 30 days, and even longer. We've already kind of went through this here just prior to the meeting, so we'll drop down to the 30-day box. And what you'll see is on the right, it'll populate, and there was 12 crimes that were reported to our office in the last 30 days. And just under that number is a list of the types of crimes. Now, some of those could also include proactive stops, like traffic stops. So that doesn't necessarily mean that it's all criminal activity. Some of it could have been a proactive stop where a deputy made an arrest. So you have to look at those. If you zoom in closer, it will give you specifically where it was at on the map that it occurred, along with the street. And so that is there available for you. Please take advantage of it. If you see anything in your specific area that causes you concern or you have a question about something, please call the sheriff's office. We will put either our captain or our patrol lieutenant in touch with you, and they'll be able to answer your questions a little more thoroughly if you have a question. So again, just wanted to make everyone aware that that is there for your use, so please take advantage of that. Couple other things I just wanted to touch on real briefly. One is the grand jury report that was done for our office this last year. That report came out in June, and there were some specific areas regarding the jail and as it pertained to jail safety. And so a couple things that they had recommended were some additional cameras in our laundry facility. They also recommended a body scanner for bringing people into the jail so that they would be searched a little more thoroughly. Unfortunately, there are some case laws out there that do prohibit the types of searches that we do. And so this body scanner will give us the ability to do a more expansive search. When people ask me, well, what is that like? If you've ever been to the airport and you imagine going through the scanner and they make you stand there and it spins around you real quick, very similar to that. And so if somebody is trying to bring contraband into our jail, we'll be able to see that, at which point we'll deny them. We'll take them to the hospital, write a search warrant if necessary, and have, you know, whatever item it is they're hiding removed, and we'll take appropriate criminal action from there. But additionally, we already have cameras installed in our laundry room. Most of what the grand jury was identifying were things that my staff had actually already identified, and there were things that we had been working on and had included in our budget. And so those items were approved, and in the case of the cameras, those actually went live about 2 weeks before the grand jury report came out. As it pertains to the body scanner, which is something, again, that was recommended, that was already budgeted back last March, and it was approved by the board. You should know that we're using some special revenue funding for that. It's not coming out of general fund contributions. And so, you know, we've been pretty thrifty and pretty innovative in how we've resolved some of these issues. So our goal is to make the jail a lot more safe overall, and I think we've done that. One other recommendation the grand jury had was some netting over our exercise yard. And the intent of that is if somebody were to come and try to throw contraband over the fence into the exercise yard, it would essentially land on top of the netting and not fall down into the yard. And so that is something that we're researching costs for now, and we'll be probably including that in this next year's budget. So just wanted to give everybody an update. If you had a chance to see the grand jury report, I wanted you to hear from me how we were responding to that. And, you know, I'm happy to tell you again that most of those recommendations were things we were already working on. So the next thing that I really wanted to talk about and just make everybody aware of, we had reached out to our auditor controller and requested an internal audit of the sheriff's department and our finances. They did that over the better part of about 6 months. Through that, there were some recommendations they had found, primarily in the area of how we handled the timesheets. It wasn't anything that had to do with being fiscally irresponsible. It was just creating some checks and balances in our timesheets. And so the undersheriff was kind enough to take on that with some of our staff, and we distributed some of those responsibilities throughout the office, because currently, or just prior to that audit, they were being handled by one person. And so we've got a much better system in place now, and I'm happy to tell you that that audit was, beneficial to us. Even though it was an internal audit, we did find some areas where we could improve. And so we're all about transparency. We're all about trying to find ways to get better. So whether it's the grand jury giving us, some advice or constructive criticism, or another department within the county, we're certainly open to that, and we're willing to make whatever changes we need to do to get better. I have some other things that I had actually kind of mapped out to chat about, but quite frankly, the questions that you guys submitted from the South County were pretty spot on with some of the topics I already had, so they will be answered through the question and answer period, and so I'll defer to some of our experts in those areas to answer those questions as we move along. So that was really all I had by way of just a general update, and so with that, I will defer to Supervisor Conant to talk about some of the issues he'd like to speak to.
Okay, thank you, Brandon. First of all, I'd like to echo what Brandon said on the homeless issue. First of all, Better Ways was opened. It's been very successful in getting people transitioning into permanent housing and permanent jobs. That facility over there, the mental health, behavioral health facility, works with people to give job training, job skills, mental health, behavioral health issues. They deal with drug abuse and alcohol abuse issues, job training, and those skills are what a lot of homeless people need to help with. And Better Ways, average turnaround period is 45 days. That is unheard of in this industry. And people are able to get a job on average and housing in 45 days. That is pretty incredible. And that is not for all the homeless. That is only for homeless that want to improve their self-worth and self-life and become members of society contributing. The other part of the homeless that maybe don't want to go there, we need to give Brandon Barn the tools he needs to get the job done. And as a board, I support that wholly, to have a permanent place of rest for homeless people and where they can go and stay and have their place of rest, and we're legally abiding by the federal and state courts, as well as our no camping ordinance. So those are some things that I think need to happen, and I think the board needs to support Brandon and get those tools, and I think we'll get there. The next is crime. Brandon brought up the statistics earlier, a few minutes ago, and I wanted to talk about this a little bit too. And I'm going to get on my horse that I say every single time I speak with Brandon. If you have a crime, report it. Do we really think that there are no crimes reported in the last no crimes committed in District 5 in the last 24 hours? Or only 12 in the last 30 days? I don't think so. How many of us are not reporting crimes that are occurring, and therefore the statistics are low and can't justify more officers on beat in District 5? I think that's critical that we all report all crimes occurring. And Brandon's office is great about coming out. They have 2 new, help me, community service officers. That's what I was looking for. They're here tonight. So 2 new community service officers that are out helping the officers write reports and do those kind of duties that maybe it's not a crime, maybe it's a stolen battery. You go, well, I don't want to report that. That's for their job. Community service officers will do that and report that. So I think that's critical. The other thing is that I think that this is not really about the sheriff's department right now, this next topic. It's about Sutter County's future, and that is development. All development that is going to occur, major development in Sutter County, it looks like in the next few years is going to be in District 5. That is the Bogue Stewart plan that is moving forward in South Yuba City, and that we're in the process of doing a tax sharing agreement with the city right now to get that. Once that's done, we can move forward on that project. The next one is Sutter Point. It was approved by the voters. It went through it's been through all the studies and the planning. It's the general plan has been amended for that project. It's 7,000 acres, 3,500 industrial, 3,500 commercial. That will create a tremendous amount of jobs and future for our county. And when you have 3,500 acres of industrial park in one site, there aren't too many places in the Western United States that have that ability to have a project of that magnitude. Those industrial jobs will create a huge revenue source for the county with little input costs. It costs much less to do commercial development, to maintain it for for the community. And so the sheriff's department, how many officers they need to send down to watch those kind of facilities? Not very many. Same with fire, not very many. Not many roads to maintain on big parcels like that as well. Those are huge benefits for the county, and that's where I just wanted to bring that up so that we're not, nobody's going, we never heard anything about this. Well, this has been going on, I think this has been planned out for 20 years, and I don't think they'll break ground next year, but I would be surprised if there isn't some ground being broken in 2 years on that project. Thank you very much.
So I just kind of wanted to expand on what Supervisor Khan has said. The board was kind enough to allow us to create 2 new positions last year. Community service officers, you've probably heard me speak about those 2 positions in the past. We have 2 amazing officers that are actually here tonight. I think they're just off camera, but they're helping us monitor some of the social media. But again, they're there, even if it's, you know, you had a battery stolen from your tractor and you don't think it's worth reporting, it absolutely is, because one of the things I always go to the supervisor and say is, well, I need more patrol, I need more bodies in the South County. And he says, well, show me the numbers that justify me convincing the other 4 board members that we need another deputy. If I don't have those numbers, I don't have anything to bring to him. So please call and report any type of crime that's occurring, even if you don't think it's a big deal or it's just minor. It's not an inconvenience to us. That is what we're here for, and we now have officers that are available to do that and to assist you with that. So please call and report those things. So now we're going to defer to Lieutenant Steve Grassi, who's going to give a general investigative update as it pertains to some of the things that they've been doing in the South County. Steve?
So before I go into detail about just a few of the investigations that my unit is currently pursuing, I just want to let you know that my unit consists of 4 detectives and 1 detective sergeant. And so that those 5 people are vigorously pursuing all felony crimes that take place within the county, not just in District 5. Whether you see them or not, they're out there. Sometimes they're highly visible. Some of the things that we do to let the community know, especially in District 5, that we're out there, are we're constantly doing probation searches on the probationers that are that reside in Sutter County, as well as parole searches. We do compliance checks on all the 290s, and also we are doing saturation patrols when it comes to surveillance. So that being said, some of the investigations recently that we're pursuing are in District 5. There was recently a robbery that took place where a suspect pulled into a residence in a driveway, and they were in the process of stealing a high-priced item. The owner of the property recognized that they didn't recognize this individual. They confronted them, and the individual attempted to run them over with their vehicle. The suspect fled, and we were able to locate the suspect's vehicle. We were able to locate the item that was stolen. We identified the suspect, and we generated a warrant for their arrest. So we're constantly pursuing, following leads, trying to locate who these individuals are that are perpetrating these crimes against you. Another issue that I'd like to talk about is we were made aware of a subject who's a registrant in District 5, and we were very attentive and very responsive to some of the issues that or concerns that you had in regards to this registrant. We'll never violate somebody's rights, but we'll always check to make sure that the person is in compliance, as well as not violating, a crime, committing a crime or violating a statute. If they are, like in this particular individual's case, this individual was found out of compliance a number of times. They were arrested. They were found also to be violating certain other statutes. They were arrested. And right now, this individual is presently in jail in Sacramento County. The third item that I'd like to talk to you about is recently there was a burglary that took place twice at a particular commercial location in District 5. The individual or individuals came at 2 separate times, once in April, once in July. The MO was the same. where the individuals or the subjects would break a window in the business, they would enter the business, and they would steal certain items in the business. The first time, we were able to glean some video. The video was not very good. We were able to see a vehicle, no plate associated with the vehicle. So we generated a track flyer with that vehicle to all the surrounding agencies. We got no leads at the time, but then during the second incident, we have certain technology out there, one of which is an LPR, license plate reader. They're in certain locations. My detectives vigorously pursued these videos and tried to time the exact time and location where that vehicle or vehicles would have left, and that license plate would have been picked up. We found a lead, we pursued it, and now we have an individual right now that we're pursuing on that. So I just want to let the people know in District 5 that even though sometimes you see us, sometimes you don't, we're out there constantly, whether it be out front and center or behind the scenes, and we're constantly trying to give you the assurance that you need, that we're trying to protect you and your rights.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. And not to put you on the spot, but I will. Could you one of the things you mentioned was, video. And so can you maybe just speak real briefly to the benefits that you've seen from your investigative unit with some of the Ring cameras or home surveillance systems that have video, and how that might impact one of your investigations?
Yeah, some of the things that we found are, some of the Ring cameras, I know that's pervasive nowadays. Everybody has a Ring camera, and they're really, really good. We did get a lead on an individual in South County that actually, so what the situation was an owner of a residence came downstairs into their kitchen. They heard something, and here they're confronted with an individual that they don't know in their home. And that individual fled on foot when confronted, but the Ring camera was able to pick up an image of that individual. Now, that image is beneficial to us because even though we may not recognize that individual right now, number one is that we're able to take that image and we're able to send it out, like I said, not just to all the surrounding agencies, but also to the people that work for Sutter County, such as people in the jail who come in contact with these individuals all the time. Even though we don't recognize the individual, we also sometimes generate those photographs or those pictures on social media. And if we don't recognize them, then one of you people will recognize them. That's how we pursue those leads. Unless we have a witness, an eyewitness, but better than an eyewitness, an actual piece of evidence that we can actually look at and say, we know who that is. We recognize, their features, their anatomicals. That is probably the best piece that we have in order to find out who perpetrates a certain crime against you. Then also there's, I know a lot of people are interested in surveillance cameras. Just remember that just like anything else, what you purchase, if you spend a lot of money, more than likely, you're going to get a good product. If you spend a little bit of money, the product may not be that good. So we see all kinds of videos, some which is not that great in quality and some which is really, really great. And the ones that are really, really great are the ones that actually help us the most.
Great. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. Next, I'm going to turn things over to Deputy Andre Lacone. Andre is our community response officer, and he's part of our community response team. Many of you have probably met Andre in the past or have been at some of the community meetings where, I've had the privilege of introducing him. We have actually we have a sergeant now that works directly alongside Andre, as well as our community service officers. And so Andre is the Swiss Army knife. He's a jack of all trades, but he is solely dedicated to responding to community issues. And so if we need someone to step aside and get out of the call rotation and handle special projects, that is Andre. And I will tell you that he's been doing some exceptional work in the South County, and he's going to highlight some of the things he's been doing for you. So Andre, please.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate your time. Thanks for tuning in. I have 4 kind of key points that I want to touch on this evening to share some information, give some updates about. The first kind of matches up with what the sheriff and the supervisor both said. The Better Way facility has been phenomenal for us. It's been a great resource in terms of getting folks out of tents and mobile homes and getting them successfully transitioned back into normal society so that they can be fruitful and successful within our community. Without that facility, we would be leaps and bounds behind where we are at currently. So my hat is off to everyone who helped put that together and the fact that we've got that available to us in terms of a resource. One of the things I'm most proud about, and I just want to shout it from the rooftops, is the Neighborhood Watch program. My hat is off to everyone in the South County that works hard for that. Those of you who are involved in it know exactly who you are. We couldn't have done it without you guys. And the time that you put into it and volunteered and reached out, and things that you've produced, and just can't thank you guys enough. It's a huge, huge project, and I think we're gonna reap great benefits from that. Probably the thing that I'm most proud of, with that being said, within a week or two of getting a chapter stood up, we were able to disseminate some information of an individual that we were looking for and utilize that communication resource and locate that individual within about 5 minutes of sending that information out, which resulted in a subsequent apprehension and arrest of that individual. So the system works. For those of you that are in the Robbins area and the other areas of Beat 10, by all means, if you're interested in starting a Neighborhood Watch program, reach out to me, contact me at the Sheriff's Office. I'll explain what we need to do to get that done. It's a very simple process, and it's a really good thing for your community and to improve communication with the Sheriff's Office. Next item I want to touch on is Second Beach. I know for the folks out in Robbins, that's a real key issue, and I want to explain a little bit of the circumstance to that. That land is actually state-owned land. It's owned by a subsidiary of Department of Water Resources, and we're currently working with them to develop a means so that we can enforce some of our county ordinances on that property, and then also so we can enforce our county ordinances on that property, and then also utilize some other outlying resources to conduct enforcement and cleanup of the area. And then last but not least is the street racing issue. I know that those are huge issues for folks out in the rural areas, especially the folks down in the Nicholas area and Pleasant Grove. We're working with CHP fairly regularly to get folks down there and try to eliminate that street racing and get those folks apprehended or cited or whatever the case may be. And in terms of resources, we're using staffing, additional personnel, vehicles, and air operations to achieve those results.
Andre, just real briefly, you'd mentioned the Neighborhood Watch. Would you mind maybe giving out your email address and or a phone number if somebody wanted to contact you and try to set up additional Neighborhood Watches in that area?
Absolutely. You can reach me by email at alicon@co.sutter.ca.us, or you can reach me at the Sutter County Sheriff's Office, and that phone number is 530-822-7307.
Great, thank you. One thing, just to kind of reiterate what Andre was saying is, you know, those Neighborhood Watch programs are essential for our success. You, as the community, you are our eyes and ears. And, you know, we at the Sheriff's Department, we truly believe and buy into a community policing philosophy. And that is where, you know, we work in partnership with the community to help solve some of these problems. And so we cannot do it without you. We cannot do it without your assistance. So please continue to set up those Neighborhood Watch programs and continue to call and report suspicious activity and give us an opportunity to respond out there. So thank you for that, Andre, and appreciate all the work that you do out there. It's tremendous. So with that, we are going to go ahead and go into some of the questions. I will tell you that, again, we got an overwhelming amount of questions online, so I thank you for taking the time to be interested enough to send those in. We will try to get to as many as we can. And so the format that we've elected to go with is we're going to start with our Under Sheriff Scott Smallwood. I believe I will handle the second question, and we'll just kind of go back and forth between the panel until we get as many of these questions answered for you as we can. So Under Sheriff, we will turn it over to you.
All righty. So before I start with our first question, the one thing I want to just elaborate on is thank you for the questions that you guys have sent us. The only way this is going to work is if we hear from you, and with COVID-19, we obviously can't have live meetings like we normally have, so this is the way we're going to do it. I am grateful that Sheriff Barnes was thinking of this idea and forward thinking and trying to make sure we still continue to reach out to our community and not let COVID delay that. So with that, if you see any suggestions on how we can improve this platform, we ask to send emails into the Sarah Davis, so we can, when we continue to do this with other districts, we make sure we continue to improve. So we ask that any criticisms would be gratefully appreciated. First question that was asked for me to kind of look into was expectations of a garbage dump when it occurs. Probably a frustrating type call for both perspectives in the law enforcement side, because it is a misdemeanor. It is a misdemeanor because of a county ordinance, but it's a misdemeanor not committed in our presence. And then trying to investigate, someone that has dumped garbage, it's a difficult task. Of course, if we do get a call, that's the first thing we're going to ask is if anybody sees people actively doing this, actively dumping trash in the community, don't wait. Make a phone call, get a description of a vehicle, get a description of a person, get a license plate. Give us something to be able to look into. If we can find a suspect, we will issue them citations. On top of, they can be liable for cleaning it up. There's other avenues we can go. We will, if you call us, we will respond. We will send our 2 new community service officers if there's no suspect contact, and they can do some investigation, and there are ways to hopefully find suspects. We can dig through some of the trash, try to find names and so forth. Knowing that, talking to our lieutenant, our captain, a lot of times the trash can be just lumber or things like that because people are lazy or don't want to spend the money to trash it. That's a little difficult. But we will do what we can. So our first ask is you to call us. Our second ask is if you see it happening, call us sooner than later. If it's on public property, there is a process that we can clean it up. We will defer that to our code enforcement and to our public works. Now, one of the asks was, what is the timeline? Well, that is a tough question. And again, it's probably a frustrating question on your guys' end because you guys want that cleaned up, and so do we. We don't want our county to look messy. But it is a time-consuming thing. We have to look at, if, for instance, tires. We contract out to get those, so we have to wait for a company to pick them up. Depends on their time frame. If it is hazardous, then it's a little bit more, sorry, hear me better. Sorry about that. If it's hazardous, then obviously there's a little bit more urgency to get that done. And if it's not, and it's eyesore and it's frustrating to you, we do what we can. But again, it comes back to timeline and it comes back to what our public works can do. Now, the big frustration part, and this is probably the one that is the toughest, is private property. Because if it's on private property, we can't clean it up. It's on private property, it's your responsibility, and that is frustrating. But there are avenues that you can take as well. There's civil, if we do have suspects, there's civil ways you can look at it. There are companies or there are agencies or organizations that will come and assist in cleaning up stuff. But if you are going to direct it towards specifically the sheriff's department or the county offices to clean up stuff on private property, we're not able to do that. And I know that's a frustrating thing, and then we will work together to do what we can to assist you. But our biggest question, I'm going to go back to it, is if we can catch them before it happens, then that's going to make it easier. And I'll go back to what District 5 Supervisor said, is you got to call us. If you see someone dumping stuff, don't wait. Give us a phone call, let us know, because then we can respond then.
Great. Thank you, Undersheriff. I appreciate that response. I'll go ahead and take the next question. The question is, overall, is crime increasing or decreasing or staying the same in our area and then the county in general? And so one of the things, obviously, I just showed you a little bit ago how you could access crime statistic to your specific your specific area. But I want to talk a little bit about crime in general and then specifically to South County. So I know that this will be hard to see, but I'll just hold it up for a point of reference if anybody has the ability to see that. One of the things you can do is go back to our county webpage, and on the right-hand side as you face the screen is our annual report. And so in that annual report are some of the statistics, UCR stats. Those are the statistics that we report to both the state and federal government. There's other statistical data on there that covers other areas of our department, like the jail and civil. So hopefully if you get a chance to look at that, you will find some of that information useful. Now I'll just talk in general about the UCR stats countywide. So my first year in office obviously was 2019. So from 2018 to 2019, we did see a decrease in overall crime. Specifically in some of the critical areas, assaults were down. Burglaries were down, and overall thefts, or larceny as they're described, were down. And so, you know, unfortunately, you have to kind of look at what the cause is of the trend. So hopefully after I'm in office for a few more years, we'll be able to kind of look into that. But overall, in my first year, crime was down. Now, I will tell you, you know, in full disclosure, the area that we were up somewhat significantly was in the area of auto theft. It went from 40 in 2018 to 59 in 2019. Now, I can tell you there, again, we need to kind of look at some of the trends and what might be causing that. But my personal feeling is there's been some changes in legislation in the last few years that have resulted in people being released from jail. And so, unfortunately, I think those are crimes of opportunity. One of the questions that'll come up a little bit later is about the zero cash bail. I was doing a quick Google search, and just as an example, in LA County, the LA Times did an article about somebody that was released from jail down there and stole a car 5 different times over the course of a week. And so when you look specifically at auto theft, that's why some of those types of things are happening. And so that's an area that we'll be working with CHP to kind of reel in a little bit and see if we can improve in those specific numbers. Now, looking at crime stats specific to the South County, again, we're only 10 months into this year, so I don't have a full year of 2019 to 2020 comparison, but we looked at 2019 to 2020 from January up through August through today. And I can tell you that, again, overall crime is down, and it looks really good. So as an example, residential burglaries was really good. We went from 11 the previous year in that 10-month period to 3 so far this year. So that's a good decrease. But again, full transparency, the one area that we did show an increase was in commercial burglaries. And we believe that the reason for that is because there's a couple spots in the South County that have been hit multiple times. Detective Grassi was speaking to that a little bit earlier. And so we're going to focus our attentions not only in those specific areas, but working with those business owners to try to help them find ways to fortify their business, I guess, if you will, and make that stronger. And so those are just some of the overall general statistical information. Again, if there's something there I didn't cover, I know it would be much nicer if you were here to ask questions specifically to me. But feel free to call the office or send me an email if there's something that I didn't address or a specific area that you have a question in, and I'll get back to you on that. So next, I think we are going to go to Supervisor Conant. Did you want to handle the question?
Sure. Whichever you like, sir. Okay, why don't we take this one on we kind of already addressed it on Second Beach and forgot my camera, my phone. Sorry. So Second Beach, and as the sheriff already alluded to the fact that is 3 people were killed there last year. The guardrail is actually Caltrans's issue. And I think that's being worked on as we speak. The other issue is the trash, as it was stated, that's state property. And I'm confident that I'm pretty confident anyway that the state's working on trying to get this problem resolved and cleaned up. And once we have the transitional housing or a transitional place for people to camp set up in a county, then the county can enforce the no camping ordinance and move those people out of there. So that's something we need to get done to give Sheriff Barnes the tools he needs to get this job done. That was the first. Is that?
That's good. Thank you, Supervisor. Deputy Lacombe?
Sorry, I did the same thing, forgot my microphone there for a moment. I just want to touch on the same thing that Supervisor Conant had just said in terms of having a facility for folks to go. There are numerous homeless issues throughout the county that we're trying to resolve for the benefit of the community as a whole. And one of the greatest tools that we will have is, again, having that facility available to us so that we can obviously operate within the constraints of Boise and some other aspects. One of the questions that I had received was how many homeless folks are in the Bear River, Feather River, and South Garden area. And do we have a plan in place to try to relocate those folks? So I wasn't aware of any large encampments in those areas, although I'd be happy to take any information from citizens. Again, they can call or email me for those tips or those advisements, and I will go down there and see what we have and see what I can do to help improve the situation. In terms of transient folks or homeless folks being on anyone's land or property that's privately owned, that's simply a trespass issue, and we can easily address that. If they're on public lands, it's a little bit different situation. But again, we can do some outreach and see if we can get those folks perhaps into the Better Way shelter or find some alternate locations for them and get them some resources to get them out of the area if they're interested in that.
Great. Thank you, Andre. Lieutenant Grassi.
Before I get to my question, can I just redirect to something that the sheriff said and just build upon that? For you folks that have been victims of a commercial burglary or any type of theft or burglary, just so you know, not only do detectives investigate the crime, but also we make certain suggestions. Certainly we can't force people to do anything, but based on what we've seen, what we experience, what we see you experience, we make certain suggestions to you to kind of help you not become a victim of the same crime again. But it's up to you to take that advice and to move forward with it. Just wanted to build upon that, sir. My question is, so what does close patrol mean? Well, close patrol means exactly what it says, close patrol. It means that your residence or your business has been identified either by yourself or by us, usually by yourself, as a place that you want us to patrol on a constant basis, to check on. Usually it's if you've been a victim of a crime, you fear reprisal, you have a TRO against somebody that's a temporary restraining order, or you have a court case and you've been threatened. Usually what you'll do is you'll contact the sheriff's office, you'll let us know exactly what the situation is, you'll tell us your address, and you'll request to be put on a list for close patrol. At that point, your address will be added to the briefings for the patrol deputies, like Deputy Lacan, or I should say, excuse me, Detective Lacan. And their responsibility will be to, if they're assigned to your beat and your address, then their responsibility will be to check on your residents and to check on you.
Thank you, Steve. Undersheriff?
Great, thank you, Sheriff. So my question was, and it's always the wonderful question of what will it take to get additional deputies to beat 10? So first of all, I know when Sheriff first took office, our staffing levels were extremely low. And we have slowly built that up, and our staffing levels are improving. So that has been one of the struggles, is because we normally, will run 3 to 4 deputies plus a sergeant. There is a deputy that's specifically assigned each shift to beat 10, and that is their job. But with that said, a lot of times it depends on calls for service. So, I mean, if there's a major call, physical, domestic, shooting or whatever in beat 7 or beat 6, then unfortunately we have to send, we don't want our deputies to go and be unsafe, so we got to send a cover units, and so that's going to pull from beat 10s and so forth. Same kind of circumstance. If something major happens in beat 10, they're going to have to pull from beat 7 and beat 6 or whatever. So I get the frustrations, because a lot of times you might not think you see a deputy out there. I will tell you this, statistically, in the short time that the sheriff has been in office, our statistics have improved. And I'll give you one example and how I know that we are out there. I know you guys might not think you see as much, and we'd love to see a deputy all the time, everywhere. And if we had 10 deputies, we can work out just there. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen. But we, just in the short time, we've improved 152 more proactive stops in beat 10 compared to years prior. So 152 stops. So our deputies are out there being active. They're doing what they can, and that's just the proactivity. That's not the calls for service. With that said, we have also added our 2 community service officers, and they have been a huge addition because they have been able to take a lot of the cold calls and that our deputies are stuck on, so they can actively be on the active calls or be more proactive, and it has showed. Our 2 CSOs have done an outstanding job in the short time that they've been here. They have done not only just patrol, but have handled all cold calls. They've helped us solve cases. And so it's another asset that we have improved from the time since the sheriff's taken office. On top of that, the other thing, and I'm going to go to the ComStat, where we look at our statistical data, is then we do special types of assignments. And I'm going to give kudos to our detective unit, because if we do see a specific problem, then they're going to do special assignments, whether it be undercover stuff or just proactivity. But a lot of times you might not see them because they're going to be undercover. Maybe they're doing something that's going to try to catch some burglaries or so forth, but they're out there working. Just as citizens, you might not see them as much. We do push for our deputies to kind of get out and try to just shake hands and talk to the community as much as they can. We try to get them out there so you see them. I know that our current operational captain and current lieutenant on patrol, that they push that, and they're doing an outstanding job with it. Your specific question to attempting to try to get a residential deputy, yeah, that's a struggle. We have to, I mean, one of the struggles is trying to get someone that can, afford, a lot of our officers or our deputies, they're young. We don't have the senior people coming over as laterals. Our pay isn't as high as others. So we have to go young. And I don't think that's a bad thing because young means they're active and they're doing stuff. But with young also comes young financial, and it can be expensive to be able to go buy a home and property in certain areas, and they can't afford that. So trying to get someone to live out there and to be a residential deputy, it's a struggle. We have solicited for one of our deputies, but he goes in between two different areas, so he's not specifically there all the time, so that's not a work for us. So I know that with the residential deputy, that's something that you guys are really pushing for, and not saying that it can't happen, but we have to be able to have the ability to first someone to go out there and be able to live out there and afford it. Some of the other notes that I'm looking at that I just want to express is as we're improving our staffing levels, which they are improving, yeah, it's still, I mean, when we're, I hate to say fat, dumb, and happy, we're still only 4 deputies and a sergeant. So 4 deputies and a sergeant, we're going to be, again, calls for service are going to be a priority. If there's a major call, then it is going to pull away. So our ask is, and I'm going to go back to Supervisor Conant, you have to call us. We have to know, we got to be able to put that data together. So you have to call all burglaries. You got to call all crimes. So then if we see there's a higher part of data, then we can go and say, hey, we need more deputies. We can push that with the Board of Supervisors. Or we can go to our detectives, or we can go to our community response officer, which I have to give kudos to Andre because he's doing a phenomenal job. Anytime that we have any type of special things, he hits it with the detectives, and they'll do their best to emphasize on those areas. I know the street racing was another one, and I think he's going to talk about that later, but he'll focus on doing special assignments. But the only way that we can get that is if you guys are calling our crimes in. If we don't know it doesn't happen, then we have no way to justify getting out there.
Hey, Undersheriff, just real briefly before I take the next question, would you mind talking a little bit, just real briefly, about some of the work you did to kind of reorganize our reserve program and get them, a decent pay, and how we're enhancing that program and be able to utilize that on patrol as well?
Yeah, so when Sheriff first got in office, the reserve program was more of a volunteer type program, and when you are requesting deputies that aren't full-time deputies, but they want to come out as a volunteer basis, that makes it a little difficult. People don't usually want to come out and go drive around on patrol and handle calls for free, at least not very often, after going through all the training and so forth that you need to do that. So what I did is I got with our Human Resource Department and our CAO, and we created programs where we have a level 2 and a level 1 program where they're now getting paid a decent wage. Our level 2s are going to get just a little above minimum wage, or level 1s, which a level 1 officer, for those who don't know, is they can be a regular deputy. They can work the streets by themselves. They're just not full-time, and they don't get benefits. They're going to get bottom step deputy pay. So with that, we have now, we're adding a couple level 1s, and we're going to add a half a dozen level 2s, and we're going to be able to utilize them. And so with that, again, go back to our captain and our lieutenant, they're going to push, when we get these guys hired, to work a weekend and work Robbins and work East Nicholas and work some of those areas that our full-timers can't get to, and try to get some extra coverage out there. And it's a lesser cost for us than paying someone overtime or hiring full-time deputies. So we're trying as the Sheriff's Department and the Sheriff to be as financially responsible as possible to utilize what we can with the budget that we have. And so the reserve program is one way we're doing that.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it. Go ahead, Matt. Do you have something, sir?
Well, actually, I just want to add back to your resident deputy issue. If somebody has a piece of property that would be suitable for a resident deputy to live in, reach out to you guys, and there's a possibility that somebody might want it. The only problem is don't forget, a lot of these younger deputies are probably wanting to be closer to town. So if you're in Robbins or Rioso or East Nicholas, it's not as likely to be able to recruit a younger deputy to live out there because it's so far from town. And so that is a little negative that we got to be aware of to think about first. Should I do the next question?
You can if you like. I'll just add on that. I mean, I've had conversations with folks out in Robbins before, and Certainly I'm not going to help broker a deal, but if you have a rental property and you have a flyer and you'd like to send that to the Sheriff's Department, we'd be more than happy to hang it up on our general bulletin board with other advertisements. And if somebody's interested in that, they can certainly reach out to you and, take advantage of renting property just like they could, in any other situation. So if you have some rental property or a house that you're interested in renting, you can certainly forward that information to us and we'll make it available to our staff. Go ahead, Matt. Did you want to take a question?
I have one here from a resident in Nicholas, and he's asking about the speed on through Nicholas and enforcement of speed. And I'd just like to address a couple things. Last year, we actually put in speed bumps in Nicholas to try to slow the traffic down. And the average speed, I think, prior to the installation of that and narrowing the lanes was 45 miles an hour, roughly there. And it brought it down to about 35. Now, on the average. Now, that means that there's probably some people going through there at 55, which is way too fast for that community. And I get it. And I have brought this up to the Highway Patrol. Technically, Highway Patrol is in charge of monitoring speed and traffic in those communities. And if this person would like to talk to me more about it, I could elaborate a little more and, on an individual basis with him, and maybe I'll reach out to you as well. The other thing he talks about is trash, unless you want to address the speed limit thing. I mean,
I think we're getting close on time, and I know I've still got a few questions.
Okay. So, and then the last is trash and people climbing the levees. That, those levees are there for our protection during high water events, and we need to maintain those levees, and it doesn't help when people drive on them, and it shouldn't be doing that. And I mean, if you see that, please call the Sheriff's Department, and I'm sure we can enforce that.
Thank you, Supervisor. I've got a couple questions here that both relate to concealed carry, so I'll just kind of address those both at the same time. The first one is, how long is the wait for a CCW, which is your concealed carry paperwork to be processed? And so currently right now what we're asking is, because of COVID, we're trying to limit interaction with the public as best we can. And so if you go again through our department webpage, you can actually apply for your CCW there. It'll take you to a link for Permitium, which handles permitting. And through that, you can fill out all the information. You can actually pay online. You can download your certificate. Even if you don't have a scanner, you can take a picture with your cell phone and just upload it to the program. And so you'll be able to do that all remotely, which is a good thing. So with that being said, once you do that, right now, if it is a renewal, it's currently about 2 to 4 weeks. If you are a new applicant, it's about 2 months, and that's at probably the high end. And the reason for that is during that time, you will have to come in and do your initial live scan, and we have to wait for those results to come back from the Department of Justice. So again, if you're already just doing a renewal, it's 2 to 4 weeks. If you're doing a fresh CCW permit, it'll be just a little bit longer than that. And then the second part of the question is, right now, under the COVID conditions, are we allowing people to add firearms to their existing license? And the answer to that is yes. We do ask that you contact Lieutenant Maples, who oversees our CCW program. The two things that you have to be aware of is the law did change. You now have to qualify on each firearm that you're going to register on your permit. And so as long as you do that and you send us the certificate, you can actually, right now in COVID era, you can take pictures of the firearm and the serial number. Again, you can upload those and send those to us, and we can do that without you coming into the office. So hopefully that answers the CCW questions. Andre?
I just want to build a little bit on what Supervisor Conant had mentioned in terms of speed through Nicholas. One of the things that we can offer is, if you get a hold of me, we can bring a radar trailer down there and place that within the community so that people have an idea of what their speed is while they're traveling through there. Obviously, they have a speedometer in their vehicle, but if there's a big giant sign flashing at them, it might make it a little more present in their mind. And then the other thing that we can do in terms of the levies and folks driving on the levies, it is a misdemeanor. However, it needs to be committed in our presence for us to be able to cite or arrest the individual on scene. An alternative to that would be if a citizen sees that individual and they're willing to sign a citizen's arrest form, then we can go forth with that and cite the individual. But those are two things that need to occur for us to assist with the enforcement of those violations. And then the question that I'm going to answer, I had an individual ask, what are the requirements for trespassing and trespassing signs, and how does that help? So trespassing signs need to be placed 3 per mile and or approximately 1,759 feet per sign between signs. And that applies to areas that aren't entirely fenced or cultivated. Additionally, those signs need to be placed at the entrance and exit of any road or trail that leads to that property.
So can I ask a question about that?
Certainly.
So if the land is cultivated or farmed actively, like a rice farm or a walnut orchard or a peach orchard or whatever, you don't have to have it posted, is that correct?
Yeah, there's an expectation that someone would recognize that cultivated land is not public land because it is cultivated there.
That's what I thought.
Therefore, it would be private property.
I wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Lieutenant Grassi, did you have another question that you wanted to share? Or did you cover both of yours already?
No, I covered one.
Okay, please go ahead.
So my next question is, would the Sutter County Sheriff's Office check my home when I'm on vacation? So one thing that, if you're afforded the ability in this COVID-19 environment to go on vacation, the one thing that you don't want to worry about is your home. So yes, we will check on your home if you go away on vacation. What you would do is, we used to have, I believe, my captain's here, Captain Chad Neiswanger. I believe we used to have the volunteer program check on the homes or the people that were going on vacation. You would do something similar to the close patrol. You would contact the sheriff's office. You would ask, or you would tell them, hey, I'm going on vacation. I'd like to place my my home on a list for the deputies to check on. And in similar fashion to close patrol, the deputies would check out on your address. But there's certain questions that when you call in that need to be answered. And so some of those questions are just so that you're prepared if you want to do this, because I know if I go away on vacation, I want to enjoy my vacation, not be thinking about, hey, is my home safe? So some of the questions that you may be asked when calling in is, of course, when are you leaving and when are you returning? Hopefully you're not on vacation for the entire year, because that would tie up a lot of the manpower that we have. But that's the first question. The next would be, what type of premises? Are we talking about a residence, or are we talking about a commercial property, or both? Emergency contact. If something were to happen, who do we get in touch with? A description of the vehicle or vehicles that you have at your residence, how many, any animals that you have at your residence, so in case a deputy has to respond, he knows, hey, there's a dog that I have and he's not nice and he's in the backyard, before they go in the backyard. In case one of your neighbors calls and says, hey, I've noticed that somebody's in my neighbor's backyard, I believe that they're somewhere in Florida or something. The lights that you're going to leave on, which lights are you going to leave on? Is there an alarm or alarms? What's the alarm company and what is the code? And is anyone going to be working at your property? So these are some of the questions, but to succinctly answer the question that was posed, yes, we want you to enjoy your vacation. So yes, you can contact us and place your home on a list and we will check on it.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. The next question, again, we're getting a little long on time, but there's a few more things that I want to make sure that we go over for the community. So I'll just try to answer this as succinctly as I can, but one of the questions is, has zero cash bail impacted crime rate? I'm not aware of any specific study yet, because I think it's a little too early, but I will tell you, in interacting with sheriffs up and down the state and looking at some of the news articles that have come out during COVID and the implementation of the zero cash bail, yes, I absolutely believe it has. I can tell you personally, in our own area, there were people that normally would have been in custody that were released, or in some cases even issued a citation in the field in lieu of going to jail. I'm only aware of one instance where somebody reoffended here locally, but that doesn't mean there weren't others. Again, I think I cited, the LA Times did an article down in Los Angeles where, 5 vehicle thefts in 1 week, and that person kept getting out and kept reoffending. I'd like to tell people that, sometimes jail is necessary for people. It's not always a bad place. We have an excellent facility. We have excellent staff. And I will tell you that we have programs that are designed to help people, educational programs like, general ed, anger management programs, drug addiction programs, religious programs. And so sometimes getting people in and getting them involved in some of those programs is just the turn that they need to be set on the right path and not go out and reoffend. Recidivism is an issue, but we try to be effective and we try to influence people where we can. And so I would certainly be leery of zero cash bail. I think everybody probably is aware that there is a referendum to overturn that on the ballot this November. It's Proposition 25. Please, if you're interested in that, read through it. I will tell you that a no vote on that will repeal SB 10 and go back to the bail process that we had before. So please read up on that, do your research, and make sure you're well informed when you go out to the polls this November. I would appreciate that. Real quick, Andre, I think you have a few questions left, but one of them I think pertains to smart water. And I really wanted to give you an opportunity to speak to that because you were one of the driving forces along with members of the Farm Bureau that brought that here to Sutter County. So please speak to that.
Absolutely. Smart Water is a crime deterrent and identification program that we're working on as a joint effort with Yuba Sutter Farm Bureau. And I'm happy to say that we're not the only county that's doing it. Butte, Yuba, I know Colusa's looking at it, Monterey, Tulare, several other counties within the state of California and throughout the United States are utilizing the program. And in a nutshell, what it is a small paint type product that works much like DNA in a mammal or a human. And so if John Smith wanted to get started in smart water, he would purchase a vial of it through the Farm Bureau. And I believe it's a little less than $100. And mark his property. If that property is stolen, and it could be recovered in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and they could take a swab of that marking or a scraping of that marking off the item that's recovered and ID it based on its DNA structure and identify that property back to its original owner. Additionally, there's other products that can, or other facets that it can be used on. So it's not just ag equipment, even though it's through the Farm Bureau. It could be used on anything. It could be used on a chainsaw, vehicle items, motorcycles, pretty much any type of property at all. And it's a wonderful product. It's visible only through a certain type of lighting, and we have recognition devices in our jail as well as in hand for our staff when they go out and contact people. So I would recommend that people look into it, reach out to me, or reach out to the Farm Bureau for additional information on it.
One more thing, it even works on like guns and things like that, small items like that as well.
Absolutely.
Correct?
Yeah, absolutely. It works on electronics. You can use it on your cell phone, computers, firearms. It's resistant to heat. It's resistant to abrasion. We've done a lot of testing with several members of the Farm Bureau to kind of see how to prepare the surface to apply it, and then what type of products will remove it. And it's an incredibly durable product.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andre. And I think you had one other question that you could probably wrap up real quick about vehicles being tagged to be towed.
I do. And this will be my last question for the night. I had someone ask how long it takes for a CHP to remove a vehicle. And generally a vehicle will be tagged with a CHP adhesive sticker, those little yellow stickers that I believe they're called a 4140 decal. And depending on the circumstances and the placement of the vehicle, if it's on a highway or a freeway surface, generally those are marked at 4 hours for removal. If it's a rural roadway or an abatement issue, it can be upwards of 12 hours for a rural roadway, and then for abatement it can be 24 to 72 hours depending on volume and available officers.
Great, thank you. Next question that I have, real briefly, again, I'll try to answer this as succinctly as I can, but it's a pretty complex question. So the question is, what types of requirements does the state put on the Sutter County Sheriff's Office that have made law enforcement and jail management more difficult or expensive? The difficult and the expensive is probably the more important thing. So just real quickly, everybody should know that jail operations are regulated. There's recommendations through the Board of State and Community Corrections, and they're called Title 15. Those are the minimum standards. So again, that's the floor, not the ceiling. We always strive to be, much higher than the floor, but those are the minimum standards. They're listed in Title 15. Feel free to look that up if you'd like. So some examples of what's required. So one of the things Title 15 says is that you have to do hourly checks on all of the housing areas and check on all the inmates. And so in the jail, the officers are actually going around and spending time in each of those housing areas every hour. They have to be logged and recorded. And, during that time, they're answering questions, handling grievances, seeing to the needs of the inmates. So that's just an example. Now, if you were to have a medical or perhaps a mental health issue, that hour check could be as frequent as 15 minutes in some cases. So you can imagine, you know, the officer may spend an entire shift just doing 15-minute checks. So that's just like one of the regulations that you would find in Title 15 and some of the things that mandate how we have to do our job at the Sheriff's Department and the corrections side. So the expense part of it, and you know, Supervisor Conant is no stranger to this, mental health and medical services are, you know, they're costly. And, you know, we see those rise every year. And unfortunately, you know, we have contracted medical. We have 24-hour medical at the jail. That is the standard that we've elected to set. So we have a registered nurse on each shift. And so, you know, but with that comes cost. And, you know, the mental health side of things, you know, psychiatrists, mental health clinicians, those are, you know, people that don't come cheap. And so, you know, for us, I think that's where we see the rising cost. Much like, you know, in our personal lives, you know, our medical costs, we see those going up in the private sector every year. It goes up for us as well in the jail and for our inmate care. And so Supervisor Conant has had many conversations with, you know, members of my department about those costs and ways to manage those. And I can assure everybody we're doing the best job we can. But when they are in our care and custody, we have to provide, you know, a certain level of service. And I think we provide a quality level of service as well. So hopefully that answers that question. So in closing, I think there was one more question, and I know that Supervisor Conant and I probably both have a little bit of a response to this, but I will defer to the supervisor. There's an issue out in your area in Rio Oso, and maybe you could talk to that a little bit, and we can talk about some of the things that we have planned moving forward.
Sure. Before we do that, Brent, I'd just like to say that we just finished remodeling the jail last year, and part of the remodel was a brand new kitchen as well as a brand new medical facility for the jail, and it greatly improved the ability to provide adequate medical care for the inmates. And prior to that, Brandon and I think we were only 18 hours on staff, and the 24 hours that is we're doing now, we believe will reduce lawsuits and cost the county less money in the long haul. And that's one reason why we did that. Back to the major problem that we were discussing is on the Bear River Bridge on Pleasant Grove Road. We've noticed since COVID-19, I think part of it is a lot of public pools are closed, but people are parking on the shoulder of the road. And it looks all good and fine until you realize in the middle of the afternoon there's shadows on the road. And the cars are parked right on the edge of the road with, in some cases, less than a foot from the white line. And you have a lot of truck traffic on that road and people getting in and out of their cars, and it's very dangerous. So the county has put up no parking signs, and it will go before the board. It's supposed to go before the board next Tuesday to approve a no parking ordinance that will be enforced by the county, and there'll be permanent signs put up, no parking. And that's the first step. There's also a problem with trash, and while we've met with Neil Hay, Brandon's been out there, and other deputies have been out there looking at the problem. The trash problem is a huge problem. It's been cleaned up to a certain degree. There's more to go. It seems like people are constantly dumping trash there, but it's not a public access area. It is owned, the property that they have to access, by the reclamation district. And when people climb up and down those levees on foot, it doesn't matter how you get there. If you climb up and down them, you're going to degrade the levee. And that is not what it's for. And it's not a public access. There's no facilities there. There's no toilets there. There's no anything there, garbage disposal, nothing. And it's creating a huge problem.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate Supervisor Conant bringing this to my attention. He had called me a few weeks back, and I had gone down and met with him, and we went and looked at the problem ourselves. And I agree with him. I mean, there are some safety concerns down there, but I had also explained that what was needed was a no parking ordinance specific to that area so that we could actually go out and do enforcement, because currently we don't have the ability to do that in that particular area. So my personal feeling is once the ordinance is passed and we do some enforcement and we disperse the vehicles, it's going to be harder for them to get down there. That will help alleviate some of the trash. It will help alleviate some of the foot traffic. Now, we recognize they may park farther away and decide to walk down there, but with no trespassing signs and again, signed, consent on behalf of the property owner for us to go in and actually take enforcement action on their behalf, we can start to chip away at some of those problems. And so I think we have, a good strategy in place, and that's where someone like Andre with our community response team, I mean, that is a perfect type of project where he can take that on and have the time to go out and work that. But first, we need the ordinance, and Supervisor Conant is aware of that, and he's taken steps to make that happen. So I appreciate you being proactive about that, sir. Thank you. So
I just want to mention the signs will be on both the north and southbound lanes of the bridge.
great, thank you. So we are now a little bit over on time. I apologize if we did not get to everyone's question, but again, we pride ourselves on being accessible. So if you'd like to call the Sheriff's Department tomorrow and speak to any one of us, please feel free to do that. We will make ourselves available to you. You can also reach us through our website. There's the ability to go on there and send us a message as well. Those messages go to myself, the undersheriff, and my command staff, and we coordinate between us, and we ensure that always one of us responds to that. So again, COVID's been very strange for us. It's challenged us in some respects. And the one thing that I did not want to do was lose momentum and lose the relationships that we had started to build with our community. You might ask, why did we start with the South County? Well, quite frankly, we had a scheduled meeting with the South County back in, I believe it was the end of February, early into March, and that got canceled because of COVID. So I felt it was necessary to make that up. I certainly am not privileged enough yet to watch this. I'm hoping that you're enjoying this format and at least finding it informative. I will go back and review it probably first thing tomorrow morning. I hope this has been informative, and if it's been successful, we're going to replicate this for other districts. We want to make sure that we hit Sutter and Meridian, get up to Live Oak, and certainly hit those areas in Yuba City that we provide services to. So hopefully soon we will climb out of this. I will remind everyone, please, follow the guidance, maintain hand washing and social distancing, and, wear a face covering where it's appropriate to do so, so that we can climb out of this and jumpstart our economy and get our businesses back open and running, and just get back to doing the business that we love to do, and that's interacting with people face to face and being personable. So again, I just thank you for allowing us to serve all of you. It's our privilege. I'd like to thank everybody who took their personal time to be here tonight and take time away from their families to be part of this panel. So thank you to all my staff. Thank you to everyone behind the scenes that's making this work. We have our IT department here tonight, making sure this runs hopefully flawlessly, as I'm sure it will. So thank you to them for giving up, their time away from their families as well. So thank you very much. And if there's anything we can do to be of assistance, please contact our office. And you have Andre's contact information, so don't hesitate to call with any questions. Thank you and good night.